thank you all for coming to our event this evening. My name is Amy. One moment. And I'll be your host for this 1340 Penn After Hours. We have a wonderful night planned for you. It's going to be a spooky good time with the Browns. We are recording this event, and we will send you the link after the event is over. This event does have closed captioning. To turn this on, you just need to click on the closed captioning button at the bottom of your screen. During this event, we ask that you stay muted, except during audience participation portions, and you are welcome to turn your cameras off or on. That's totally up to you. We do ask that you turn them on for just a moment so that we can capture the total number of people who are here for funding purposes. So if you could do that right now, we'd really appreciate it. All right, well, thank you for that. Finally, we would love to know where everyone is from. If you could quickly let us know where you're from, that would be great. Here's the poll. So you'll choose which county you're in, or if you're in a different county, or even outside of Colorado. That helps us with our funding as well. Sasha, were you asking a question about how you answer the SCFD, or are you asking about the camera? Oh, okay. So down at the bottom, you should have an icon that looks like a video camera, and you just toggle between off and on. If it has a red line through it, then it's off. Oh, great. So we got a couple of the majority maybe from Denver, and some couple out of state. Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. We're so glad you could join us. So first, a little background about tonight's event. During the late 1800s and early 1900s, when professional mediums all over the country were claiming to communicate with spirits, ordinary people developed an interest in psychic phenomena. Most of these people had neither the means or access to professional mediums, so many of them developed what were known as home circles. The home circles were simply small gatherings of family and friends who would get together and attempt to contact spirits. A number of the home circles began to believe that their attempts to communicate with the spirits were successful. Their amateur seances, they believed, were actually connecting with ghosts in the spirit world. While we don't know if Margaret Brown ever held a home circle, we do know that she had palm readers at some point at her parties. Tonight, we will be joining some friends at a spooky soiree at Mrs. Brown's. Keep your eyes open. You never know what you may see.
Thank you for inviting me along this evening, Anna.
Oh, you're so welcome, John. It's so nice to have you here to keep away any unwanted suitors. You're always here for me in that regard.
Yes, while you know that you're like a sister to me, I certainly could never have any romantic feelings towards you. No one else needs to know that. It works out fine for the both of us, wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely, until one or the other of us wants to court or even marry somebody, this arrangement works beautifully. It was so nice of Mrs. Brown to invite us to her soiree tonight.
While the invitation is always appreciated, I'm not so sure about the topic of this evening.
Oh, John, you're always so stiff. It's all in good fun.
How else am I supposed to respond? These people would have me believe that I can talk to spirits through a wooden board? You're joking, right?
It's called a Ouija board, John. And I don't think it's that hard to believe that we can communicate with spirits from beyond the grave. I was talking to the woman who brought the board tonight, and she was telling me all about how it was invented, how it got its name, and even how to use it. Apparently her brother-in-law invented the board, and she lives right down the street here in Denver from Mrs. Brown. That's really fascinating.
And she showed you how to use the board?
Yes, we arrived around the same time, and we were talking about spiritualism and other things. You know how curious I am about so many things.
Yeah.
And she was telling me all about how to use the board. If you want to communicate with the spirits, you call out to them, and they will move the planchette. That's that heart-shaped thing in the middle of the board, and they will give you answers. And then when you're all finished, either you or the spirit will go to goodbye on the board, and the spirit will go back to wherever it came from.
Yeah. This is all just smoke and mirrors, if you ask me.
Oh, come on, John. It's so much fun. I think Emma and James are almost finished. Let's go try, can't we?
All right, fine. But if I'm going to believe in this, I need some tangible proof.
I don't think you will be disappointed. Let's go sit down.
Okay, John, here is our Ouija board. We have 2 rows of the alphabet in semicircles. We have yes and no, a row of numbers, and goodbye.
Yes, and I see that. Let's just find out if this thing works.
All right. Spirits, my name is Anna. I am here with my friend John. Are you here, spirits? Yes. How many spirits are here? O N E. 1. There's 1 spirit. Were you a human on Earth, spirit? Yes. What is your name, spirit? Welcome. R O S E. Rose?
Wait a minute. Rose was my aunt's name.
Shh, John, if you're too loud, the spirit will go away. Rose, are you John's aunt? Yes. Do you have any information for us, Rose?
Well, what does she want to tell us?
J R. J R. Aren't those your initials?
Well, yeah.
J O B. Job. M O N E Y. Job money? Job money.
This is so bizarre. Gosh, I haven't told anybody this, but I think I'm getting a promotion at work. It's down between me and one other fellow. This is incredible.
She's moving it again. G O O D. Good. J O B. Good job. Goodbye. Well, she must have left us.
Well, this is too good to be true. Maybe this contraption does work.
What's going on over there?
Well, why don't we go over there and find out, shall we?
Sure.
Spirit boards or talking boards were first produced in America in the 1880s, stoking the fire of the spiritualist movement. The most famous of the spirit boards, the Ouija board, would come around a decade later in 1890. Initially produced by the Kennard Novelty Company, the company later became the Ouija Novelty Company. Did you know that the Ouija board has a Denver connection? The Ouija had someone who helped give birth to what it is today. Her name was Helen Peters, and she lived in Denver for 47 years. She was the sister-in-law of the man who patented the board. Helen was considered by some to be a strong medium. Helen Peters was present on the night the board was given its name. They decided to ask the board what it wanted to be called, and the board answered O-U-I-J-A, Ouija. And when they asked what that meant, the board answered G-O-O-D-L-U-C-K. Good luck. Eerie, isn't it? Except for the fact that Helen Peters was wearing a locket with the picture of a woman, the word Ouija above her head. The story can be found in the Ouija founder's letters and was acknowledged by Helen Peters. The woman in the locket was likely women's rights activist and author Ouida, who had said that Peters admired, and Ouija was likely a misreading of that. The group of men who came together to form the Kennard Novelty Company in Baltimore were not spiritualists, however. They were keen businessmen who found a niche to make and market the talking boards. Helen Peters was the sister-in-law of Elijah Bond, one of the investors. Bond asked Peters to come to the patent office with him in Washington, D.C. when he filed the patent. Before he would agree to give them a patent, the chief patent officer wanted a demonstration. He told Bond and Peters if the board could accurately spell out his name, which was supposedly unknown to them, he would allow the patent application to proceed. With Helen at the board, the planchette correctly spelled out the patent officer's name. And so, on February 10th, 1891, a visibly shaken patent officer awarded Bond a patent for his new toy or game. The board was mysterious and an instant success. It should be noted that Bond was a patent attorney and likely already knew the man's name. Unbeknownst to the patent officer, by 1892, the Kennard Novelty Company went from one factory in Baltimore to two in Baltimore, and then two in New York, two in Chicago, and one in London. Helen Peters moved to Denver and lived here from 1896 until she died in 1940. At one time, she was living a few doors down from the museum at 13th and Pennsylvania. Aside from mentions in Denver city directories, she's basically been erased from history. No one knew that there was a woman involved at all with the Ouija board. Helen Peters Nosworthy was buried in the Fairmont Cemetery. Recently, the Talking Board Historical Society honored her by providing a headstone at her grave with the title, "The Woman Who Named the Ouija Board." Victorians, who from today's point of view seem to have a decidedly morbid bent, were fascinated by the idea of being able to communicate with departed loved ones. Though it was first brought to the market in 1890, the parlor game known as the Ouija board had been around for many years before that time. Between the 1840s and 1920s, there was a great interest in spiritualism and divination. At the same time, the mainstream church declared divination a sin, which only served to drive the practice into private homes and small gatherings. Before 1890, people made their own devices similar to Ouija boards, whereby a spirit might answer simple questions. So we want to find out about you. Have you ever tried to contact the spirits or know your future? Let's find out. Have you ever, and you can choose as many as apply, or you can drop something in the chat if it's not listed here. Have you ever used a Ouija board, visited a medium, had your palm read, or had a tarot reading performed? Go ahead and answer. And then don't forget to hit submit. All right. There we go. Wow. You got to try it once. I'm not ready to rule it out. Used a Ouija board. Were you in elementary school when you used a Ouija board? Well, that's really interesting. Let me see if there's anything in the chat. Let's close this. And, oh, no, but we have somebody. Oh, we said that she knew, Sue knew that she was buried in Fairmount Cemetery. Good job, Sue, before I mentioned it. Awesome. Well, thank you for giving your input. As you can see, people are still interested in the topic. Now, let's join Emma, James, and Mary and see what they're so excited about.
Because this would be the position for focusing the energies from the spirit world into the table.
What's going on over here?
Good evening. We're just discussing some of the rudimentary aspects of table tipping.
Table?
Yes.
How does it work?
Well, we place our hands meeting here at the fingertips like this, and then we go through the alphabet, and if the spirit wants to send us a message, they tip the table corresponding to that particular letter. And then over time, the message is received from the beyond.
John and I were just talking to his Aunt Rose through the Ouija board. Aunt Mary, do you want to try table tipping?
Sure. Please. My dear, would you like something to drink?
That sounds wonderful.
So, how does this work?
Well, you sit or stand next to each other and you touch your fingers like so. And then you attempt to communicate.
Let's talk to grandmother.
Okay?
Grandmother, it is I, Anna. Would you communicate with us today? What is your afterlife like? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L.
Oh, you know, we have an L.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O.
We have L and O.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V.
L-O-V?
A, B, C, D, E.
L-O-V-E.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L.
L-O-V-E-L.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y.
Lovely. She says her afterlife is lovely.
Oh, that's so nice to know. Thank you so much for communicating with us, grandmother. Do you have anything else you'd like us to know? I think she's gone, Aunt Mary.
Ah,
Thank you for speaking with us, grandmother. It was so nice to talk to you. We miss you.
goodbye, Mother. I am so glad that you're having a lovely time in the afterlife. I just wish you had more to share with us.
This night might make me a believer yet, Anna. But this method is so boring. You have to wait forever until the table moves at the right moment. I can see why people like the Ouija board way better. It's so much faster.
I definitely agree with you, John. But let's go tell everyone what we experienced so far.
Table tipping.
Because this would be the
Table tipping, also known as table turning or raise the table, was a type of seance that became a popular part of the spiritualist movement. It can be done with any number of people, but it works best with between 2 and 4. Participants encircle a table, placing their hands on the surface, pinky to pinky. As we saw with Anna and Mary, the guests concentrate their joined energies to ask the spirits questions. Through manipulating our own energies, the spirits can communicate by lifting or turning the table. The spiritualist movement and table tipping swept across America in 1848. In that year, Kate and Margaret Fox of Hydesville, New York, claimed that they could communicate with spirits. Kate and Margaret were a mere 11 and 13 when they began communicating with the disembodied spirit of a peddler who had been murdered for the sum of $500 and then buried beneath the house by a previous tenant. They claimed they communicated with the deceased through a series of knocks to spell out words, typically 1 rap for yes and 2 raps for no, in an answer to a question. And a series of raps would indicate the letters of the alphabet. The use of a table worked in a similar way to a planchette on a Ouija board and became the conduit of choice for many people hoping to talk to those beyond the grave. In 1849, the Fox sisters first demonstrated their rapping at the Corinthian Hall in Rochester. This event played an important role in the creation of the spiritualist movement. In 1888, the Fox sisters admitted that it was all a hoax. Spiritualism did make its way to Colorado in the 1860s, likely coming with the influx of the pioneer settlers. By the 1870s, Colorado was rife with mediums and seances. Spiritualist societies in Boulder and Golden were formed, and spirit materializations became headline news. The Rocky Mountain News advertised the coming of the wondrous Davenport brothers in May 1872 in one of their issues of the paper. The Davenport brothers were nationally known for their innovative spirit cabinets, which were huge, large, rectangular 3-walled box structures with a curtain hanging in place of the 4th wall. A medium would enter the box with their hand tied. The curtain was pulled to hang in the place of the 4th wall, and then various phenomena, such as the playing of music and flying objects, commenced outside of the box. Similar cabinets are common additives to contemporary magic shows. For many, the commotion outside of the box was a testament to the medium's supernatural abilities. The Davenport brothers' fame drew in a large audience for their Denver performance, and the show was a great success. The most prominent Denver medium was Mr. Peck. He was born and raised in Portsmouth, Ohio, a brick mason by trade. Peck began his work as a full-time medium in 1870. His seances were hosted in his home located in downtown Denver on Stout Street, and they were usually well attended. Peck was able to charge $10 per patron, an enormous sum of money for the day. And until that point, an unheard of amount ever paid for any medium. Peck's exorbitant admission prices were reflective of the widespread popularity and demand for mediums in the late 19th century Colorado. Now, let's meet James and Emma, experienced ghost hunters.
Do you remember the house we visited in Greeley? The one with the super narrow staircase?
Yes, I do.
Incredible.
It was. Hello, Anna. Are you enjoying Mrs. Brown's soiree this evening?
Oh, it's been so entertaining. I think I've managed to turn my dear friend John and my Aunt Mary into believers.
Lovely.
I certainly have seen some incredible things this evening.
Oh, how rude of me. John, do you know Emma and James Miller?
I'm afraid I haven't had the pleasure.
James
Nice to
Miller.
meet you.
Pleasure.
I'm John Davis.
I'm Emma, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
My dear husband John and I were just discussing some of the spirits that we've encountered recently.
Oh,
Emma and James are ghost hunters, John.
how fascinating.
Would you care to hear about some of our adventures?
Yes, my wife and I have had some real thrills recently.
We were in a house where a spirit liked to sit in a chair and look out the window. The maid would turn the chair around so that the spirit could look out the window, but the lady of the house didn't like that and she said so. Well, we were sitting there. We watched that window unlatch, swing open, and hit the lady of the house in the head.
No.
Other spirits are more playful. Another house we visited around Christmas time was all decorated for the season, including a set of toy soldiers. Well, each morning, the lady of the house would wake up and find the toy soldiers lined up on her staircase. Well, she yelled at her poor son, who swore up and down he had nothing to do with it. Then they all went away for the weekend, and when they returned, there, once again, were the toy soldiers lined up on the staircase.
How do you find them, these ghosts?
We use a variety of tools and methods.
What sorts of tools and methods?
We love talking tools, don't we?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
One of the first we use is just quite a common, simple object, a candle. Light the candle, and in the presence of the spirit, the flame will turn blue. It's quite astonishing.
I get goosebumps every time.
Really is amazing.
Oh, another fascinating tool we use are dowsing rods. We use dowsing rods to communicate with the spirits.
And we'll use glass or mirrors to catch ghostly and spectral reflections.
And those really work.
It depends on the spirit.
Sometimes when we're encountering a dangerous or malevolent ghost, we will use a witch bowl.
What are those?
Witch bowls are ceramic bowls that are filled with hair and saliva from the family living at the house. Then the bowl is placed at the entrance, and this repels the evil spirit.
Yes, while we hope that our dear departed loved ones will haunt us peacefully, sometimes there are evil spirits lurking around and we don't want them. James, do you remember that time the ghost made you sick?
Oh, my dear, how could I forget? We were hunting one particular ghost, and all of a sudden I became deathly ill, and I was vomiting all over the house. We hunters call it ectoplasm, and ectoplasm is proof positive that a ghost is present in the dwelling, but not the most pleasant proof we can encounter, to be sure.
I'm glad it wasn't me. That was quite disgusting.
Yes, indeed it was, but we saw some amazing ghosts that day.
We did, yes.
Wow, you use so many tools and methods.
Yes, we use many tools. It can be quite exciting.
Do tell us more.
Originally,
Do you remember the
Throughout-
house? Do you remember the house we visited in Greeley?
Originally, throughout history, dowsing rods, sometimes called divining rods, were used to find water. Referred to as water witching, divining the location of water dates back many thousands of years. An 8,000-year-old cave painting found in the Tassili caves of northern Africa depicts a man holding a forked stick, apparently using it to search for water. Historical images of water dowsing appear all over. They have been found in Egyptian tombs as well as ancient Chinese etchings. The rods are grasped by the two prongs, and in the case of water, are pulled towards the ground once the location of water has been found. In the case of other things, the rod appears to receive transmissions from the hidden object that causes involuntary muscular contraction, which in turn makes the rod bend or quiver violently. Some dowsers claim to be able to detect buried substances merely by passing a dowsing rod over a map of the area where the substance lies hidden. The term divining rod, sometimes used to describe the forked instrument, is frowned upon by dowsers because divination is not considered part of the process. Similar to table tipping, pendulums can also be used to attempt to contact the spirits. A pendulum is typically made of a small weighted object, such as a stone or a crystal tied to a string or a chain or a cord. Using a pendulum is similar to dowsing. While holding a pendulum steady, you can ask a yes or no question or make a statement. Depending on the spirit's answer, the pendulum will move a certain way, in a circle or elliptical, forward and back, side to side, or it can even bob up and down. But through new scientific discoveries, we have found that spirits radiate energy and electrical currents. Some people that say that through EMF, electromagnetic magnetic fields, spirits can freely interact and move these dowsing rods. Some tests have found that it is most common that they cross the rods for yes and uncross the rods for no. Let's take a quick look at some of the tools that modern ghost hunters use in their search for spirits. Here is a novice ghost hunter, Alyssa Kleckner, to tell us more.
So I think I started thinking about investigating as early as in elementary school. We had an electric typewriter that was in our playroom, and we would occasionally hear it go tick, 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 tick. So my sister and I were like, well, clearly someone's trying to send us a message. So we put paper in it. We never got a message. I'm Elisa Sikora Kleckner. I am a resident designer, costume shop manager, and adjunct professor at a university, and a novice ghost hunter. I'm happily identifying as a novice because I'm still taking all this information and I haven't come up with any kind of definitive belief system around this. One of my favorite things about going on a ghost hunt is just experiencing the place itself, because likely you're going to be experiencing it after hours. And so you get to hear the building, you get to really see the architecture. I love going to those places and hearing about the history of those places outside of the paranormal as well. So what was the cultural importance of this place? I think that one of the most important things to do if you're going to investigate or observe is to know thyself. All right, know that you have allergies. So make sure that you have allergy pills. And I'm not a spring chicken, so make sure you have some pills if you get a little achy. A water bottle so that you can filter your water. And then mosquitoes love me. I don't want to be distracted by them. So just little things that actually keep you comfortable so that you can experience as much as you can clothes that are black. And the reason that I choose clothes that are black is because I don't want to be a means to reflect light. And then I try to wear the quietest shoes that I have that are also super comfortable. A voice recorder. I think that some of the most interesting communication that can happen is just with a little simple recorder that anyone can purchase. And so, of course, not surprisingly, you just need to make sure you have all the batteries because you know something could get drained. I don't know what I think of that, but why not be prepared? So I used to carry a DSLR so that if something happened, I was ready. And you never are. Having a little camera though, even just to remember the day, because I have a terrible memory. And then of course you need a light source. I don't want to fall. I also know myself and I will trip. I don't think you have to do this in the dark. I think it's convenient to do it in the dark because it's quieter, but most of the experiences, come to think of it, have been in the middle of the day. I desperately need maps. I can get lost just about anywhere. I do keep my cell phone with me, and that's more for emergencies than anything. I also try not to, because depending on if you're investigating with a group of people, cell phones can sometimes mess with other people's equipment, and I would never want to have anybody have a false positive because I have my cell phone with me. I personally don't carry a ton of stuff because I try to use my eyes and my ears. I just recently had an experience and I was surrounded by ghost hunters and I was the only one who saw it, because everybody was looking at their camera, going through their evidence or listening to their recorders or all this kind of stuff. And I just watched a shadow run across a catwalk for a good 5 beats. I am a novice. I am a gentle believer. I have a lot of skepticism about it, but I think it's just really fun to go and experience the history and experience the people who have all different types of commitment to their belief systems. It's why you should go and explore other places in general. I'm not searching for proof to share with the world. I actually have just questions for myself, and I want to be open to a plethora of potential answers to those questions. So I think I started.
Well, it looks like if you're interested, it would be pretty easy to assemble your own ghost hunting kit. The pain reliever seems really important. So we want to hear from you again. Have you ever gone on a ghost hunt or a ghost tour? You know, by yourself or with a guide? And we also want to know if you've ever experienced anything. If you've experienced anything, we want to hear about it in the chat. Yeah. Do you think that after this you might want to try a ghost hunt? Those that said no? Could be fun. Let's see if we got anything in the chat. Anything weird ever happen when you were on a ghost hunt? Oh, Sue says she had a couple of experiences at the Botanic Gardens. That's close here. Also some experiences in hometown. Sasha may try it. Sue, do you care to elaborate what happened at the zoo? I mean, not the zoo, the Botanic Gardens. We love good stories. Yeah. And you guys feel free to unmute and just tell us if you want to too. Ooh, at the Botanic Gardens again. Ooh, creepy. Whoa. Very cool. Wonder what happened at the Botanic Gardens this summer. Let's see, this is from Sue again. I had to use the restroom and I thought I was the only one there. You heard a little girl say, "Excuse me." Ah! So I just jumped aside and there was no one there. Ah! That's crazy. So it totally took you by surprise, it sounds like. Oh, and Marissa went to a graveyard and a heavy air fell over her. Ooh, good writing. And your friend then watched a ghost run at me from the other side of the yard. Ah! Oh my gosh. That is scary. Stacy has a home that's 107 years old. Water faucets will turn on and we had candles. Oh, they mentioned using candles that were placed high on mantles and they moved them to the floor. And you knew they didn't fall because they were broken. They weren't broken. Creepy. I guess you have to be open to it and not feel like it's creepy, right? My soul partner, oh, I'm so sorry, Joyce. I'm not ready to say it's not true that there are spirits around us. Keep an open mind, right? Well, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing all that with us. So now it's time to return to the Brown soiree. Shall we all join them now?
You seem a bit skeptical about all of this, John.
John is skeptical about spiritualism. However, I think we may have changed his mind tonight.
While I have seen some incredible things this evening, I still think it's just smoke and mirrors. For example, those photographers who claim that they have the ability to take pictures of the spirits.
You don't think those are real?
I highly doubt it. My cousin is a photographer and he showed me how to create ghostly images on pictures.
How interesting. It's fascinating what we can do with photography.
There are a number of charlatans out there, to be sure. We've met quite a number of them, haven't we, my dear?
We sure have, although I think tonight everybody here seems rather genuine.
Yes, I think Mrs. Brown has seen to that based on some of her past experiences.
What do you mean?
Well, while Mrs. Brown was in Egypt, she went to an Egyptian bazaar, and the Egyptian gentleman that she saw read her palm, traced the lines on her palm. This was before she went on the Titanic. He told her he was seeing water, 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 and that he was also seeing a sinking ship with bodies all around.
That's incredible.
Mrs. Brown didn't think much of it at first, but then she was thinking, you know, it's a premonition. So she went and she purchased a new Shakti talisman while she was in Egypt and brought it with her on the Titanic. When the ship sank, one of the few things that she took with her was this talisman. She did end up presenting it to the captain, rostrum of the ship that rescued all the survivors of the Titanic.
You know, I read another story about a woman who was a friend of Mrs. Brown's, and she also had a premonition about a sinking ship.
I heard that too. I believe she was a Mrs. Bucknell.
What was a premonition?
Mrs. Bucknell told Mrs. Brown that she had evil forebodings about the fate of the ship. She then later told her daughter that she thought it was just nerves, but then look at what happened.
Well, that'll certainly tell you to trust your instincts.
And what was that? Did anybody else hear that?
I heard a cat purring. Does Mrs. Brown have a cat?
I don't see a cat.
Just because you don't see a cat doesn't mean it's not here.
Well, what do you think about all this now, John?
I don't know, Anna. The world is a mysterious place, and perhaps we'll never know the existence of spirits and ghosts, but it sure is fun to communicate with them.
Well, perhaps you would like to join my wife and me on one of our next hunting expeditions.
Sure, why not?
Well, cheers to that.
Cheers. To a wonderful evening.
You seem a bit skeptical about it.
The roots of spirit photography can be traced back to the 19th century. During the 1850s and 60s, many photographers were experimenting with new effects, such as stereoscopic images and double exposure. But some unscrupulous photographers soon realized that these techniques could be exploited for profit. American William Mumler is believed to have been the first to capture a spirit in a photograph. But how did Mumler take the spirit photographs? Here is Emma Hogan, a Birmingham photographer, to tell us more about it.
Well before the days of Photoshop, there was the very believable phenomenon of spirit photography or ghost photography. Countless family photographs or sinister portraits in which the photographers or viewers claimed spirits were present. People were fascinated with the idea of what came after death, and because photography was such a closed group back then, not everyone had access to a camera, photographers could get away with some pretty shady tricks in order to convince the general public that spirits were real. So I am here today to talk about spirit photography. Hey guys, it's Emma here, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to enlighten you all on the history of spirit photography, or haunted photography, ghost photography, psychic photography. It's all the same thing. So not only am I going to go over the history of spirit photography, I'm also going to delve into how they did it. But first, a little bit of history. It's believed it all started with one man, William H. Mumler, who is considered the first spirit photographer. In the 1860s, Mumler, who was also trained as a jeweller, enjoyed experimenting with photography, and he first captured a spirit in a self-portrait he took in 1861. Upon developing the image, he discovered a ghost-like presence in the frame, who many claimed resembled his cousin, who had died 10 years prior to the photograph being taken. Soon this image was everywhere. It was even published in spiritualist newspapers. The image was met with both skeptics and believers alike, and regardless of their stance on the paranormal, it was still a photographic phenomenon. Mumler initially disregarded it as something on the glass plate. Maybe he hadn't cleaned it, something went wrong, who knows. But regardless of what it was, the public went mad for this image, and Mumler had himself an idea. He decided to become a full-time photographer, and he and his wife bought a studio in Boston, claiming that he was a spiritual photographer who could capture the sitter's deceased loved ones in frame with them. His wife Hannah was a clairvoyant. That's ironic. Sometimes she would even comment on the spirits surrounding these subjects that only she could see. Many other charlatans and copycats soon followed suit, and thus spirit photography was born. And at the height of his success, Mumler had a pretty lucrative con going on. Most photographs only cost around 25 cents, but he would charge $10 per sitting, which in today's money is probably around about $300 or just over. And what's more, he would claim that the spirits wouldn't always appear in the portraits with the subjects, and you might have to come back for several sittings before they show up. But of course, Mumler's work wasn't without its critics. Over time, the authenticity and believability of his images came into question. See, when he started out, the ghosts were merely shadows or pools of light, or you could just make out a face. But as time went on, they began more and more to resemble living people, and something just wasn't sitting right. Under all of the pressure and growing cynicism, Mumler moved to New York in 1868. In March 1869, he was visited by a client who seemed very much like the others. Or so it seemed. The client paid for a photograph and the spirit did not appear. And after this, the client revealed himself to be a New York City marshal working undercover to try and capture Mumler and his antics. Mumler was established as a fraud and was arrested and subsequently put on trial. This trial drew a huge crowd in and was highly publicised. You could say it was the O.J. Simpson trial of its time. After an extensive trial and investigation, Mumler was ultimately acquitted. And although he returned sheepishly home to Boston with his tail between his legs, that didn't stop him from getting up to his usual tricks. In 1871, Mumler created his most famous spirit photograph. The reason being, the sitter was none other than Mary Todd Lincoln, the widow of the former President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln, who was assassinated in 1865. In the image, a faint outline of the former president is seen standing behind her. It is also thought to be the last official photograph of Mary Todd Lincoln, who died in 1882. By now, Mumler's career was rapidly in decline, and he passed away in 1884. Now, there is one thing to keep in mind here at the end of this long and winding tale, full of twists and turns. It's that although he had his critics, there was never any proof, solid proof, to say that Mumler's photographs were hoaxes. I mean, looking at them now, it's fairly obvious that they most likely were, but the point is there was never any solid official proof. He wasn't called out completely for being a charlatan. And you'd think that with that, the craze of spirit photography would just end there, but no, it's still going today, catering to gullible people, conspiracy theorists, and paranormal junkies alike. There are still countless publications, such as magazines and books and websites and blogs, that claim spirits can be captured on film. For example, some Japanese snapshot photographs are believed to include images of ghosts. Ghosts and the paranormal are deeply rooted in Japanese culture. These are now referenced in different medias, including manga and anime, novels, and even video games. Rooted in myth and folklore, and even theatre and film. This cult craze is even referenced in the 2008 English remake of the film Shutter, where one of the central characters is sitting in an office for a magazine, surrounded by countless Photoshop artists faking these spiritual photographs. So where does that leave us at the end of this little history lesson? Well, we still have yet to go into how these images were created. In William H. Mumler's case, there are two possible answers. In his earlier photographs, it does look like a little bit of light manipulation, possibly when developing the images. But the most common method that a lot of people seem to agree with is double exposure. The photographer removes the lens cap, takes an image of the sitter, then places the lens cap back on. The lens cap is then removed again when another person enters the frame. Thus you have a double exposure. But there are plenty of other ways spirit photography can be faked. So I'm going to demonstrate a few of them in this video. And I could be authentic in using one of my film cameras, but for quickness I'm just using a DSLR. Sorry. How cute. And there you have some convincing or maybe not so convincing spiritual photography, depending on your own. Well before the days of photo.
That was a really fun video. I like that. As we saw, spirit photography quickly became popular. Being that it was the early 1860s and photography was a relatively new technology, experts had a hard time finding anything fake with Mumler's spirit photographs. The list of his clients grew, but so did his critics. Ironically, one of Mumler's greatest critics was a man who built his career on deception, P.T. Barnum. Barnum, whose Denver's Barnum neighborhood is named after, supposedly purchased the land in Denver to house his circus animals in the winter. However, the land was never actually used for that purpose, and this story is likely legend. His daughter was living here at the time and was married to William Bucktel, a name which may be familiar to Denver folks. Anyway, returning to Mumler's trial, Barnum claimed that Mumler was preying on those grieving. In his trial for fraud, Barnum testified against Mumler and even showed a picture of himself with the ghost of Abraham Lincoln to demonstrate how easy it was to create these photos. Despite Mumler's trial, spirit photography continued to thrive, especially as ownership of cameras grew. As Michael Pritchard, Director General of the Royal Photographic Society, puts it, by the 1880s, anyone could pick up a camera and take a picture. It opened the door for some of the charlatans who were keen to lead people on and play on people's emotions. Perhaps the best-known photo hoax was orchestrated by two young cousins, Frances, age 9, and Elsie, age 16. Known as the Cottingley Fairies, the photos even fooled Sherlock Holmes author Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Taken in July of 1917, the story goes that the younger of the two cousins returned from playing one day, and her shoes were soaked through from playing in the stream at the bottom of the garden. When her mother demanded to know why she said, "I go to see the fairies," she determined to support her cousin. The older girl convinced her father to lend her his camera, saying she would bring back proof of her cousin's claim. When the girls returned and the picture was developed showing Frances surrounded by 4 prancing sprites, they were adamant the image was real. To bolster their claims, several weeks later, they took a second photo showing Elsie with the dancing gnome. The girls made a pact never to confess how they had taken the photos, but with their parents stumped for the next 3 years. In 1919, the older girl's mother took the photographs to a lecture to be examined. And from there, word ultimately reached Sir Conan Doyle, who was researching an article about fairy life. He sought to prove the case for his long-standing interest in spiritualism. From his point of view, if he could use photography to prove the existence of fairies, then he could likely also photograph the supernatural. Conan Doyle had several experts look over the photographs before publishing them in the Strand magazine in December of 1920. The author purchased cameras for the girls and asked them to take more photos. And so a second set of photos was published in 1921. It wasn't until 1983 when the two girls, then old ladies, admitted that the photos had been faked. How did they fake the photographs? Let's go back to YouTube and the Bradford Science Festival to find out.
When Francis Griffiths and Elsie Wright decided to fake fairy photographs, they took their inspiration from a book. Francis had a copy of Princess Mary's gift book, featuring stories and poems by illustrious writers of the day, including Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. It also included a poem, A Spell for a Fairy, which provided a template for the Cottingley fairies. Elsie copied the fairies from Princess Mary's gift book. She added wings, cut them out, and fastened them to pins. The camera they used was a butcher's midge, a box camera, a little bit like this one. Francis and Elsie positioned the fairies on the bank using hat pins. Francis positioned herself behind the cut-out fairies. Elsie pointed the camera and took the shot. It was the first photograph she had ever taken. The other fairy photographs were taken using the same method. Arthur Conan Doyle became interested in the fairy photographs because of his deep commitment to spiritualism. Doyle believed that it was possible to communicate with the dead and even to take photographs of their spirits. For years, Doyle had been arguing with scientists who said that spiritualists like him were gullible fools and that supernatural photography was a fraud. They said that Doyle had an extraordinary inability to grasp the principles of scientific investigation. Quite an allegation to make about the creator of Sherlock Holmes. So when Doyle heard about the fairy photographs, he thought he had the evidence to prove his critics wrong. Doyle had the photographs checked to see if they were double exposures, but he was so keen to believe in the fairies that he refused to consider that they were just photographs of drawings. Doyle used his status as the creator of Sherlock Holmes to take on the scientific establishment. The Cottingley fairies had changed from a practical joke to something much bigger. A battle over science itself.
So the change in Colorado's public attitude towards spiritualism occurred after 1915, when the spiritualists began receiving more bad press than ever before. Fanciful stories about spectacular phenomena were almost completely replaced with stories about swindling mediums. Coloradans began to ardently voice their increasing distaste, not only for counterfeit mediums, but also for anyone outside of an organized religion who offered spiritual or supernatural services in exchange for money. Gypsies and fortune tellers, along with mediums, were ardently protested against. Additionally, the development of spiritualism is hard to track after 1915 because popular opinion seems to have conflated it with anyone or any practices associated with the paranormal. Newspaper articles after this point use the words medium, gypsy, and fortune teller interchangeably. Coloradans also began to seek legal repercussions for deceitful behavior. Clairvoyants were chased out of town, arrested, and/or fined if persecuted. This intolerant behavior increased precipitously and climaxed directly after World War II. So we really hope you enjoyed this program and learned some new things. And I learned some new things from the comments too. So we appreciate that. If you follow us on social media or you have visited the museum lately, you may have seen our ghost cat merchandise. One of the most common supernatural things people report experiencing at the museum, and we mentioned it in the program, is a black cat. Sometimes he's heard meowing or purring. According to former volunteers and staff, there was a black cat named Lang, named after the architect of the house, who was a property cat in the late 1970s. We've put in the chat how to purchase Ghost Cat. This is our lovely Olive who works with us, but we also have stickers and cups and that sort of thing. We hope you enjoyed tonight's event. Thank you again for coming. If you want to learn more about Victorian era spirituality, please join us at our next 1340 event, Penn After Hours, 1340 Penn After Hours, and it's called Women in Spiritualism. The event will be virtual and will take place on January 27th. On March 10th, we will have our in-person Titanic escape room too. Tickets and information are coming soon, so keep an eye out on our social media as well as our website. We would love your feedback about this. So we're going to take a quick moment, if you can, and complete the brief survey that we're dropping into the chat. And bonus, if you complete the survey, you can be entered into for a chance to win a free ticket for a future virtual or in-person 13 Penn and After Hours event in 2022. Everyone have a great night, and thank you.